It's not uncommon. We have people and they'll say things like, "Oh, I'm not retiring for 10 years. I don't need to do this." Well, what if that means that you're putting your money in the wrong place that's going to create more tax down the road? That if you're a year or two away from retirement, you can't change. So that is absolutely wrong. The earlier you start planning, the better situation you're likely to be in. You're listening to Retirement Straight Talk with Paul and William, a father and son team helping you tackle financial planning challenges and real world decisions that matter most. Each episode, we'll share straightforward advice and proven strategies to help you build your dream retirement.
Welcome back, everyone, to Retirement Straight Talk. I'm William Brecka, financial planner from West End Wealth Planning, and I'm joined by my dad and co-host, Paul Brecka. Good to see you again, Dad.
Hello, William, and welcome everyone. Glad you could join us.
So today we're diving into a topic that quietly determines how long your retirement money actually lasts, and also, just as importantly, almost, how much tax you will pay during your retirement and also in your estate as well. And that's income sequencing in retirement. But before we get into that, Dad, I just wanted to give a quick update to everyone because last week, me and you were at the IPC conference in Vancouver, their annual conference, and there were some really exciting things that we saw, some new things coming out. Like personally, what gets me really excited is some of the new technology advancements. And it's going to allow us both to do our work, I think, more efficiently, but more importantly, really deliver a better client experience, allow them to do things easier, save them time. Like it's crazy to me, some of the new technologies that are coming out.
Yeah, the especially to me, the areas of retirement planning that gears into exactly what we're going to talk about today, as well as insurance planning. So we're able to show people graphically in one page online, say, look at if we change how we draw your income, here's the difference in tax. Here's the difference. It's going to allow us to for you to have income for another 2 years or whatever that number is. Wonderful and simple planning tools to help the end user, the client, understand very simply what different strategies, how they'll make a difference.
Okay, so let's set the stage, everyone. During your working life, for most people, things are relatively simple as it pertains to your income. You're working, so you're drawing salary from your employer, or maybe you're a business owner and you're just taking salary or dividends out of your business. Now, as we fast forward into retirement, things get a lot more complicated, don't they, Dad?
Yeah, I mean, there's no two people that are the same. And it's not just because their financial situation, it's because their mindset on finances, their experiences, how they grew up. So 10 families or 10 people that have very similar financial situations, they may have 10 different strategies. But in terms of moving forward, why this is important. It's important because the majority of people worry about money. This is proven time after time. Having a plan in place that provides clarity on the best approach to drawing income, that's going to create peace of mind for the individual. And that's going to mean you'll worry less about your money. You've got the plan, it's written, it's analyzed, it tells you the best way to draw it out. So you can spend time, people can spend time doing what's really important. Because I've never heard of anyone on their deathbed saying anything that resembles, boy, I wish I spent more time on my retirement planning. So now, for example, today, uh, income can come from numerous sources. Maybe you're still fortunate. You have a defined benefit pension plan. You work for the government or a big company. Most people have RSPs and RRIFs. Um, they have flexible withdrawal schedules pre age 71, but starting at age 70, you have restrictions. So that has an impact. Maybe they have a life income retirement account, TFSA, non-registered account. If you're a business owner, you may be extracting funds from your corporation or a holding company. Of course, we have government benefits, Canada Pension Plan and Old Age Security. What if you're getting an inheritance or you're anticipating an inheritance? Maybe you're having a sale of business, perhaps a sale of a piece of property. All of those have an impact on when to take out income. So each has a different tax implication. Some have withdrawal rules, some don't. And of course, there's fun things like the old age security clawback, which is no good. You've paid, well, essentially through our taxes, you paid into old age security your whole life. And if you've been successful, the government just takes that back.
And like just to set the stage and reinforce again, when you're working, your income pretty simple. But now when you're retired, you're dealing with all those different types of income sources, all have different tax implications. And when you don't have a strategy tying all that together, you run into real risks. So you need a strategy in terms of the proper sequence or mix of how do I take income from all these different sources I'm dealing with in retirement. Like a few examples that could be you end up paying a lot more tax simply because you're withdrawing from the wrong accounts or in the wrong order. Another big one that retirees are really concerned about nowadays is high RRIF minimum withdrawals, because when you open a RRIF, there's a certain percentage of that account that you're required by the government to take out every year, and some people, they face higher RRIF withdrawals than they need to because they didn't do the proper planning, and the result, higher taxes than what would have been necessary if you'd done that planning. Another last example, big one, old age security. There's a OAS clawback that's based upon a certain percentage of your income every year. And again, if you don't do the proper planning, you could run into the risk that you lose some or all of your old age security again because that planning wasn't done.
And that's why mapping out and planning this out ahead of time can make a very, very huge difference. I mean, a few weeks ago, we did an analysis for a client. We were able to put it up on one screen and show the client, here is the difference between taking your government benefits at age 65 or age 70. And I think it added by having showing that client that changing from age 65 to 70, I believe we added about 3 years to how long his income would last, 3 or 4 years, something like this. Like, that's incredible. Imagine that just doing some planning at the beginning, you're adding 3 years to your income. That's fantastic. That and one of the things I found is that a lot of you can go online and there's retirement planners everywhere, but those retirement planners don't do this type of stuff. They also do not deal with things in after-tax dollars. And to me, I've said for many, many times over many, many years, the only important dollar is an after-tax dollar.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, so the key takeaway here for our listeners is that retirement today, it's like a multi source income puzzle. And if you're not thinking about how those sources interact, you could actually almost certainly you're giving away more in taxes and overall net worth than is necessary. So, I mean, I think now we have a good understanding, Dad, of just how complex the landscape is for retirees and what can go wrong without a plan. So now let's shift gears a little bit, and we see this all the time as well. People relying on just oversimplified generic advice, often from the internet, but can also be just at dinner parties. Someone, a friend or colleague, tells you what worked for them, or even from well-meaning professionals. So, is it actually helping you? Let's break that down further now.
I just want to mention one thing. We like to talk about Warren Buffett, and he has a wonderful quote that I think relates very, very, very much to what we're talking about today. And I believe the quote is, "An idiot with a plan can beat a very intelligent person without one." I may be mixing up some of the words there, and that's hard to fathom, but there's a lot of truth behind that. So here's the thing, generic advice, one size fits all. That's what often happens. And quite honestly, sometimes if you're in a very basic situation with just government benefits and a bit of RSPs, quite honestly, there's may not be a lot of planning that's needed. However, the more complicated you get, the more sources of revenue, the savings can be much more significant than many will realize. So, for example, the templated generic advice is if you have non-registered investments and registered investments, the templated solution is to take out the registered first because there's usually much, much less tax on that. But that doesn't account for a lot of things. It doesn't account for uneven account values for RSPs versus big TFSAs. It doesn't account for lifestyle, health considerations. Um, it doesn't account for such things as will that mean that when you have the significant RRIF minimum withdrawals at age 72, is that going to put you up in a higher tax bracket? Is that going to mean your old age security is going to be clawed back? Is that going to mean that you're going to potentially have significant more taxes in your estate? And you remember, in your estate, people often don't think of it. I mean, the majority of people are maybe in the 35-40% marginal tax bracket, but your state is almost certainly taxed at the highest rate at 53%, plus executors' fees, plus legal fees, plus whatever else. It's not unusual where you're talking about a 55 to 60% loss. So oftentimes, if it's important to you to minimize estate taxes, having a lot of RSPs in your estate is not a good suggestion. So again, that's why we want to look and do the planning first. There's an old saying that says prescription before diagnosis is malpractice. In other words, you should always do your planning first, and key to things working properly for you.
Yeah, like to the dangers of just generic advice, we run these plans on a weekly basis for our clients. And what we've seen just in doing these plans is that generic advice and rules of thumb do not work because what is right for one person, for one client, not necessarily right for the other client. We see all sorts of different proper income sequencing plans that clients do. So again, it differs widely from one client to another. And just with that, I mean, here's the basic framework that we run our clients through at Dad.
Yeah, I mean, first thing is you want to map your income sources. In other words, where's all your money coming from? You're going to have government benefits, probably going to have some investment money, RSPs, maybe non-registered money. Great. Um, do you have a corporation where you have corporate money? Is there an inheritance? We talked about all these things before. Let's look at all the sources of income that you have. And next thing, you want to model the timeline. Now, and what that read is projecting how long you think you're going to be alive. And here's where a lot of people make a mistake too. How many times will have we heard, "Oh, I'm not going to last that long. I'm not going to be around that long." Or here's the great one. "Oh, if I get that old, I want them to just do me in." Well, I've heard that a few times before, but my guess when you get that old, you might change your mind. We use up to age 100. Why 100? Because we're living longer and a lot of people live well into their 90s. You don't want to turn age 92 and look at your investment account and there's nothing left. That is not a good situation. You want to look at inflation. You want to look at the potential for health events. Are you going to need money for down the road for healthcare needs? Governments are having big deficits. Are they going to provide more or less healthcare in the future? Use your own specific situation. So that's number two, timelining. The third part of our five-step process is to sequence those. And this is where the analysis is key. Again, we've talked about RSP drawdowns before age 72 that may be applicable for you, or it may not. I mean, we did an analysis for a client a while back, and using the traditional methods of drawing down non-registered investments first and waiting for RSPs later, or we changed it to show the comparison, where we drew down some of the RSPs in earlier years while the client was in a lower tax bracket. And get this, we were able to add $2 million to the after-tax estate. $2 million. That can give you the idea of the power of proper modeling and sequencing. Again, look at things like dividends versus salary. If you're an incorporated business owner, rental properties, you're going to sell them or keep them. inheritance, so on and so forth. So let's look at that. And that's where we went through the program. And that's where we talked before about, we did this a few weeks ago for a client, and we're able to show something simple, which is just postponing old age security and Canada pension plan. We're able to show that client again how to add 3 years to how long their money would last. Wow, that's incredible. That's step three.
Dad, do you mind if I go back, to stay on sequencing for a little moment? Because what we find when we do these analysis for our clients is it's often not just one or the other, RSPs or non-registered money or TFSAs. Often we find it's a mix of both. So again, that's why you have to run the numbers and do that proper planning to determine what's the right mix for you based upon your personal circumstances. Because like I said, often it's a mix of all of them.
The other thing too, what's important for the retiree? Some people, it's very important to leave a big after-tax estate. Some people, it's not. It's just, I'm dead. Give me maximize what I've got while I'm living. Again, there's no right or wrong, but what's important to you? And that's where the proper sequencing you can show, hey, like we can create maybe a bigger estate here. And here's the impact for earlier in retirement. Or if you want it reversed, here's the impact. The secret there is you have the plan, you have the analysis, you have clarity. So if you have clarity, you're going to worry less about your money. So going back to our 5-point process to do this, number 4, we try to minimize the shock of clawback. And what this means is old age security clawback. So again, old age security clawback, if your personal income, not family, is over about $93,000, it's 93,000 change. It changes every quarter. You're going to start losing your old age security. And the old age security, I think now is what, about $7,500 a year. You know, it's not a huge amount of money, but it's not a small amount of money either. So again, what that means is, can you smooth out your income to try and take more money when prior to having old age security, or just smooth it out so you reduce or minimum withdrawals? Again, the target is to try and keep your personal taxable income, not gross income, taxable income below that threshold of just over $93,000. So that's point 4 in the
Potentially,
5-point
I'd say
process.
not in all circumstances, Dad. We're gonna get into more into that later on, but that's certainly a factor you have to look into. Not always the case though for everyone. Again, depends upon your situation.
And the 5th point of our 5-point process to sequence your income is regular reviews and updates. Everything changes continually. Just think back 5 years ago, your own situation. I bet for most people listening or watching, their situation has changed significantly in 5 years or 10 years. And probably a good estimate, probably in 5, 10 years, most people listening or watching, things are going to change. Of course, the economics changes, tax rates changes, and the investment situation changes. Your situation will change. So you always want to update and change your projections. Like, imagine this, if you're doing a 30-year projection, well, could you imagine if you're working for a business and the person in charge says, can you provide me with a 30-year estimate on the business? You look at them like they're nuts. The annual reviews and changes are key, because otherwise, if you have a plan that's 5 years old, pretty good chance it's next to worthless. So that is our 5-point process to maximize retirement income and lower taxes. The first step, inventory all your sources of income. The second step is model the timelines. In other words, how long are we going to do these projections for? Third step, the strategic sequencing. Try to model it to pay the least amount of overall tax during your lifetime and in your state. Step 4, minimize old age security clawback. And step 5, regular updates and reviews.
So that's the framework, everyone. Now, I wanted to move on and apply that to a strategy that gets a lot of buzz online, and it's called the RSP meltdown. And there's a bit of an illustration to show here that shows the dangers of following online financial advice or one size fits all advice. And it's known as the RSP meltdown. And Dad, I don't know Whether you've seen this or not, there's tons of stuff like this on the internet. I saw a video on YouTube a month or so ago, and the title of it was 99% of people should be following this strategy, should be following the RSP meltdown. And yes, and I thought, okay, like that's bizarre, quite frankly. The RSP meltdown, we're gonna explain it more here in a second. Makes sense for a lot of people, but for a lot of others, it makes no sense at all, and we're gonna show that here. But Dad, first, before we get into that, could you explain for people what is an RSP meltdown?
RSP meltdown is the situation where, again, starting at age 72, you're required to have minimum RRIF withdrawals, and that can mean you're taking more money than you actually need, putting yourself in a higher tax bracket. The other thing is too, if you're not drawing, if you draw out money earlier, you might pay tax at a lower amount. Now, doing this can mean old age security. By melting down your RSP earlier, you could reduce old age security clawback and reduce taxes in your higher situation. Now, it's kind of attractive, if because it could allow you to pay tax earlier at a lower tax bracket than higher. It also could mean potentially to pay less estate tax, depending on if that's important to you. So, now what's the trade-offs? Now, the trade-off is it reduces your net worth in early retirement because you're drawing money out from your RSP that is fully taxed at your top marginal rate, rather than drawing money out from lower taxed investments like non-registered. So to get the same amount of after-tax income, you have to draw out more dollars from a RIF. So you have less. Now, the other aspect of this you want to be aware is that, of course, your RSPs grow tax deferred. Now, how many times have we done this? We have a number of clients who have significant non-registered investments, and markets have been very good. They've made good money after the last number of years, but you need to rebalance. Good news and bad news. Good news, you made a lot of money. Bad news, we want to reposition. There's tax on that realized gain. You don't have to worry about that in your RSP. You can rebalance. There's no tax consequences. And that has a significant impact.
Yeah, for sure. Like, let's put into a real world example. And I took this example from Aaron Hector to give credit to him, and another financial planner. And it looked at two different scenarios, assuming a retiree age 65 who needs to start drawing money from their portfolio to fund their retirement. So plan A just assumes steady withdrawals. They just take from their RIF whatever's necessary to fund their retirement lifestyle. And then it compares it to plan B, which is they implement this RSP meltdown strategy. So they take more from their RSP than is necessary when they turn 65, reinvest the surplus into TFSA and non-registered accounts. And so let's see the effects of this here. There's a lot of intricacies involved in each one. I'm not going to get into each one here, but the high level findings of these examples are that before this person turns 85, the RSP meltdown is actually favorable to them. And the reason for that is they've taken money out of their RSP in their earlier years. So if they pass away before the age of 85, their after tax estate is higher than it would have been than if they hadn't, just because they have a smaller RIF, the smaller taxes when they pass away. Now, the interesting thing is, and again, this reveals the dangers of one size fits all planning, is that past the age of 85, the scenarios flip. So past the age of 85, it's not advantageous for this person to do an RSP meltdown. And the reason for that is that when they pulled out that money from their RIF or RSP earlier than they needed to, what they lost from that was tax-free compounding that takes place within the RSP and RIF, and also they prepaid taxes on those withdrawals that they didn't need to. So past the age of 85, there's a higher after-tax estate for this person by not implementing an RSP meltdown. And just another interesting thing that might add some more color here is according to actuarial tables, if you're a couple age 65 in Canada right now, you have about a 90% chance of one of you living to the age of 90. So for whatever that's worth, but again, that informs all of our planning because we put longevity into this as well.
A lot of people don't believe that, but that's very true. I mean, how many of our clients, a number of our clients are in their 50s and 60s and they have parents. You know, my mother's 92. She's living great. She's cognitive. We had lunch with a client the other day. Yeah, mother's 92. Mind is still perfect. Body's starting to, not do as well as it did 30 years ago. But that's also why the planning is it. Now, here's another situation. Let's say where the planning is important. Let's say you have two siblings. You're 65 years old. You have two siblings. They're not in good shape. Both your parents may have passed away early. Chances are you may have a lower lifespan than someone else. So something like the RSP strategies might make sense for you, but you want to have the information, the clarity ahead of time to make your decision.
That's it for today, everyone. I think if there's one thing the both of us want you to take away from this, it's this. How you draw your income in retirement matters just as much as how much you saved it. Saving up for retirement, that's just the first step. How you draw down your sources, that's the next step. And another thing is there's no universal formula, there's no one size fits all strategy. The best strategy really is one that's personalized and tested with multiple different scenarios just as your life unfolds.
Yeah, and the other thing too, people should consider is planning should start well ahead of time. For example, it's not uncommon we have people coming with us and they'll say things like, "Oh, I'm not retiring for 10 years. I don't need to do this." Well, what if that means that you're putting your money in the wrong place that's going to create more tax down the road? That if you're a year or two away from retirement, you can't change. So that is absolutely wrong. The earlier you start planning, the better situation you're likely to be in.
Yeah, if you want a second set of eyes to look at your drawdown strategy to see if it maximizes the number of years your money will last, reach out to us. You can book a call with us using the link in the show notes. All right, that's a wrap on today's episode. Thanks everyone for joining.
Thanks everyone for joining us. I certainly hope we'll see you next time. If you found this helpful, be sure to like, follow, and subscribe to Retirement Straight Talk on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. We'd also really appreciate it if you could leave us a review. It really helps others find the show and join in on the conversation.
The views and opinions expressed in this video may not necessarily reflect those of IPC Securities Corporation. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon as a basis for investment decisions.